What's up, dudes? This is RelaxingMr. C here, bringing you a video that's kind of different than my usual videos. But they're talking about a couple of my favorite games of all time, Bioshock Infinite. And the reason why this video is kind of different is because I'm going to be talking about the storytelling and philosophy that this game employs through its narrative and environment. Having that said, there will be spoilers in this video. So we're going to dive right into the first Bioshock game and how it starts, because as soon as it starts off, it starts pushing the ideologies in the game. You are Jack, a passenger on a flight bringing a gift back to his family. The next thing you know, the plane is crashing into the ocean and you see a lighthouse in the distance. Now, remember this fucking lighthouse. As you walk in, you see a giant banner with the words, "No gods or kings, only man," with a man's face right above the banner. And for those of you that don't know, this is where the philosophy of the game actually starts. As you go down to the city known as Rapture, a man named Andrew Ryan begins to tell you about his mission.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose rapture. A city where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small. And with the sweat of your brow, rapture can become your city as well.
Now, what Andrew Ryan is trying to explain to you is his idea of objectivism. What objectivism is a political philosophy created by the Russian-American philosopher Ayn Rand. The idea behind it is that a society flourishes if each member focuses on their own self-interest over the interest of others. In doing so, you get a society where everyone feels accomplished and happy. Andrew Ryan tries to convey this in the speech with the lines, "Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his own brow?" And where the great would not even be constrained by the small. Even through Andrew Ryan himself, you see that he is an homage to Ayn Rand, with their initials being the same and him having the same exact backstory as her. They both came from communist Russia and saw the horrors of what an extreme communist country can bring. In this game though, we see a Rapture that's not thriving at all, but rather dying. And we see the failure of objectivism. What we learned though is that it wasn't the idea that failed, but rather the individual that made it that way. Which leads to our next philosophy, or more so popular saying. The saying goes, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Rapture as a society would have worked out if Andrew Ryan didn't end up growing suspicious of the city he created and make them cut ties with the outside world, which goes completely against the entire idea of objectivism and the no intervention of the government. As he becomes more controlling, the city begins to fall into a civil war and the citizens start to side with our main antagonist, Frank Fontaine, or the more common name he goes by is Atlas, which is a direct reference to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. In the end, we see Andrew Ryan justifying his decisions by saying it serves his own self-interest, which led to his demise. What we need to take from this game and objectivism is that we need to work on our own self-interest first, but we also need to focus on other people's happiness as well. Having that said, I'm going to move on to the next game, Bioshock Infinite, because it has ties to the first game actually. The first ideology we're going to talk about that comes up in this game a lot is compatibilism. What that is, for those who don't know, freedom is not physically or psychologically forced or compelled to do what one does. It is a matter of being able to choose and act in a way which one prefers or thinks is best given how one is. The best way to explain that is that instead of being compelled to do an action, you have a tendency to think about your decisions and take the best course of action for yourself. And to better understand how this philosophy ties into the game, I'll explain the next ideology. We have determinism, and determinism is we ultimately have no choice in the matter. Everything is predetermined and is inevitable in the end. So pretty much, history of the universe is fixed. So when we combine these two ideas together into one idea, we get the main theme of Infinite, and where the character has his own freedom and chooses what he prefers, but ultimately has no final say in the outcome. To explain this through the game, we all have a choice on what weapons and plasmids to use to tackle the situations thrown at us. But in the story, there will always be a revolution we have to go through, and always a lighthouse. And that's where the last philosophy comes in, with there always being a lighthouse. I hope you remember that fucking lighthouse from the first one.
We swim in different oceans but land on the same shore. It always starts with a lighthouse.
I don't understand.
We don't need to. It'll happen all the same.
Why?
Because it does. Because it has. Because it will.
There's so many choices.
They all lead us to the same place.
Now we have the many worlds theory. This theory states that the universe duplicates into different universes when an action is taken or if a person does not take action. An example in the game is the baptism in Booker's backstory. In the universe you played in, he rejected his baptism and led to a life of alcoholism and increasing gambling debts. But if he took the baptism, he would have been a man of God and not be able to have children, which leads you to become Comstock, the main antagonist of the game. How this even comes to be is that the Lutece twins take you to a different world to see how the situation would play out if you met each other. They have the technology to see the different worlds, so Comstock already knew that you existed and everything that's going on. Throughout the game, you see the determinist ideology show its head with the coin toss and the baseball. That will always have the same outcome no matter what world you're in. So this is where Infinite kind of ties to the first game. And this is where I told you to remember the lighthouse. Because in every universe, there is always a lighthouse that will bring you to a city either in the air or the sea. There is always a man drunk with power, and there's always a man trying to take him down. These philosophies are worth reading into, and these games are worth playing and experiencing everything that I just talked about. Now, before I wrap up this video, I just want to bring up a fun fact that I couldn't really figure out where to put into the video, but yeah, so here it goes. In the end of Infinite, you end up killing the songbird that's been after you, but you kill him by bringing him into Rapture. And this is kind of the cool part. You can actually hear his last screams before he drowns in the first Bioshock game, right after Sander Cohen blows up the guy in the theater.
It's okay. It's alright. I'm here. Just let go. There you go. There you go.
Elizabeth, I'm sorry.
I don't know if they added this soundbite after Infinite came out, but nonetheless, it's still a really cool detail. So that wraps up this video. If you liked it, subscribe, and leave a comment. I would love to hear what you guys think about the philosophies in this game, or if you know some details that I don't and I forgot to mention. Having that said, have a good day, have a great night, and I'll see you next week.